Hello, YouTube. This is Professor TK the Chemist, and I've got another video for you. This channel is going to provide you with weekly content on the science behind different headlines. And so the first video that I did was on the science on the Jussie Smollett's bleach attack. Well, now I'm doing one on heavy metals like arsenic and lead that are found in fruit juice package. And so before we get started, I want to go ahead and let you guys watch this video so you can see what's happening. Let's roll the clip.
Report out this morning says some popular fruit juices may contain heavy metal contaminants. Consumer Reports tested 45 packaged fruit juices for heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium. It found measurable levels in every product. Long-term exposure to these metals could cause some serious health risks, like kidney disease and certain types of cancer. More than 80% of parents with children 3 years old and younger give their kids fruit juices. Anna Werner looks at what parents should do. Anna, good morning.
Well, good morning. Heavy metals are substances that make their way into food because they occur naturally in the air, water, and soil. They can also wind up in food during the manufacturing and packaging processes. Now, Consumer Reports says improvements have been made since they last tested juice products 8 years ago, but they're still recommending that parents give their children less juice. As a mom, how do you think about fruit juice?
So it's the bane of my existence. Sure, can you use your fork?
Mom Stephanie Trilling says she tries hard to keep her 4-year-old daughter away from juice, mostly because of its sugar content.
I'll be at a birthday party and I'll see it on the table and I'll cringe a little inside because it's not something I want to give to my kids, but I also don't want to be that mom who's restricting everything.
But she may have another reason to restrict juice intake, a new analysis from Consumer Reports. James Dickerson is Chief Scientific Officer.
Consumer Reports wanted to investigate the state of the juice industry, particularly bottled juice.
His team tested 45 different juices for 4 heavy metal substances: inorganic arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury. They found that every single product contained a measurable amount of at least one heavy metal except for mercury. 21 of the samples contained one or a combination of heavy metals that reached a level Consumer Reports researchers deemed concerning for daily consumption. And Consumer Reports says the metals found in 7 of the 21 samples had the potential to harm children who drink only a half cup per day. The CDC says long-term exposure to heavy metals may put people at risk for kidney disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, damaged ability to learn, and certain types of cancer. Consumer Reports is recommending parents lower the amount of juice they give their kids.
So they should be concerned, but don't panic. Frequent exposure to these heavy metals through the juice is the concern.
The Juice Products Association, whose board of directors includes executives from PepsiCo, Welch's, and other juice brands whose products were tested, said they haven't seen the full study, but called the results unfounded, and told us they're committed to providing safe and nutritious products that meet FDA standards. They also said there is no scientific evidence indicating that trace levels of heavy metals have caused any negative health outcomes. But Dr. Leo Tresande, director of environmental pediatrics at NYU's School of Medicine, says
the science is telling us increasingly that there are particular time points in life where even a small amount of exposure can disrupt hormones and thereby contribute to disease.
He recommends parents swap the juices for something else.
My suggestion is that they simply eat an apple, preferably organic, and drink water as a substitute for these juices.
In 2013, the FDA proposed limiting inorganic arsenic in apple juice, but no change was ever made. The FDA had no comment. Consumer Reports says their findings are a spot check. They shouldn't be used to draw definitive conclusions about any specific brands. Now, we reached out to all the juice companies. 10 responded, saying their products are safe and follow all food safety guidelines.
Yeah, important thing to think about. Yeah. Limiting the amount certainly is good, not only for your health, but in limiting the risk for this. Yeah. Got a lot of sugar sometimes, too.
Yeah, a lot of sugar.
Thank you, Anna.
Now, after hearing that report, heavy metals found in baby food and fruit juices, does that really surprise you? It shouldn't, but if it did, Let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about what they were saying. Now, as a chemistry professor, we talk about the periodic table all the time. So, over 85% of the periodic table is made up of metals. But the video mentioned heavy metals, and so you're probably wondering, well, what exactly are heavy metals? Well, let me show you where cadmium is. Cadmium is right here in the middle where you see your transition metals located. Then there's arsenic right here, which is number 33. You also have lead, which is also right here, number 82. And then there's mercury, okay? Mercury, which is number 80. All of these metals are heavy because of their molecular weight, okay? And they have been found to contain things that are very harmful to children and adults. I'm going to show you next why they're very harmful, okay? The Consumer Report found that heavy metals are in canned tuna, protein powders, fruit juice, rice products, and infant rice cereals. And the sad part about it is these foods are based on eating them during their developmental period. So they looked at over 50 popular baby and toddler foods, and they did research, and they put them into 4 different categories: baby cereals, packaged fruits and vegetables, packaged entrees like turkey and rice dinners, and your packaged snacks including cookies, crackers, crunchies, puffs, snack bars, wafers, and biscuits such as teething biscuits and rice rugs. Now, I remember when my children were little, we did give them baby food, but I also breastfed a lot of all 3 of my children. And in Enfamil is notorious for having a lot of these heavy metals in it as well. And what exactly are heavy metals? As I already told you before, I gave you some of the names of some of them, but you also have aluminum, okay, that we did not mention. And so these are some examples of how they look or what they're used in. Now, the dangers of them in baby food is that the human body, of course, needs small amounts of certain heavy metals, such as iron and zinc, to function properly. But cadmium, inorganic arsenic, lead, and mercury, especially methyl mercury, can be toxic for everyone and pose health risk for young children. Exposure to heavy metals can harm the health of adults and children also. Oftentimes, you hear of heavy metals like lead in lead-based paint. And so for homes and apartment buildings that were built prior to the 80s, a lot of the paint had lead in it. And if it chips off, the children eat it and it gets into their bloodstream and it causes cognitive development issues in children. Even a small amount of these things, of these heavy metals, can actually affect a child's IQ by lowering it. And they end up having behavioral problems. And it's also being linked to autism and attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, okay? And I give my students all the time word problems that kind of show this type of thing. And we kind of go a little deeper about it because we talk about the metric system and, the amounts of the levels of these, the lead that's in the blood. So take, for instance, this very first paragraph here. According to a Duke study, okay, at Duke University, researchers compared the subjects' childhood IQ test scores with their adult tests to see if lead exposure had any lingering impact. And if you want the links to these, I'm going to provide them for you because I believe in showing, my resources. Okay. They found that for every increase in blood level concentration of 5 micrograms per deciliter at age 11, that it dropped 1.61 points at age 38. So if you're already behind the 8 ball, so to speak, where your IQ levels are not that high when you are young, imagine the impact when you get older. Those who were considered to have elevated lead levels as children, over 10 micrograms per deciliter, had IQs that were almost 3 points lower than those of their peers as adults. And this may not seem like a significant change, but let me tell you, it is a change when you're trying to do cognitive activities. Okay, you may be on a job and they're requiring you to do certain things, and if your mental capacity isn't there, you could have some issues later. And as a result, according to this study, This could represent $18,000 less in lifetime earnings. In other words, you may not get paid what you're worth because of your mental capacity. Isn't that something? And so as you see here, I have a picture of the brain, and right here, your frontal lobe, that's where you think. That's what allows you to think and make certain thoughts and beliefs. Okay? So we'll delve a little deeper about the brain at a later time. Now, the dangers of this food also impacts children and adults because they also absorb more of the heavy metals into their bodies as you become an adult. Okay. Now, how can heavy metal poisoning be caused? It's caused by, of course, industrial exposure. So you have a company that's blowing over all these toxins from their company, is blowing over into the food, the gardens, the water system. So that leads me to air and water pollution, and of course the food. And we can't forget about the medicines and improperly coated food containers and plates and cookware. So a lot of the food containers have BPA's in them, bisphenol acetyl acids in them, which isn't good. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, ingestion of lead-based paints. Now, here's the issue also, as I mentioned before, about baby food, because baby food has arsenic in it. And you're probably saying, what? How does it have arsenic? Well, because of the rice. You know, rice is grown in the ground. So products that were made with rice fared far worse than the other products. Okay? So you got snack foods like bars and cookies and crackers and crunchies and crisp and puffs and all those things that I mentioned earlier. It is poisonous, okay? And if you're giving your children these things on a regular basis, that could be problematic based on what I just told you earlier. So, of course, the Consumer Report contacted the manufacturers, and this is what they said. They all, of course, stressed the importance of safety, and some noted that heavy metals can be naturally occurring. Yes, we get that. We know that. But most also said that they did their own testing and supported the government setting limits for heavy metals in baby and toddler foods. So here's the issue. When you do your own testing, you don't necessarily go by certain guidelines. Okay, so you have to have a third party who can come in and kind of reevaluate what you've already done. Okay. And I forgot to mention too in this particular presentation that toys that are from China are also linked to having issues, having heavy metals in them like cadmium. I remember giving this out to my students and showing them how cadmium also is found in those children's toys that you get in the grocery store, you know, for 25 to 50 cents. So we have to be very mindful of what we allow our children to play with. So, while there is a lack of federal regulations for the amount of heavy metals in most foods, California does set a threshold for lead. Now, I do know this for a fact that Californians bout that life. They bout it when it comes to explaining that if it doesn't fit a certain proclamation of their like the propositions, like proposition number 65, they're going to make sure that they put the label on it, okay? I remember I went to California 3 years ago. Practically every store had these labels. The sunshade, sunglasses had the labels. According to Proposition 65, this may contain harmful toxic chemicals. So I believe if people see these symbols everywhere, they would probably avoid consuming them. Heavy metals do get into our food, like I mentioned to you before, because they're all part of the Earth's crust. So some of them are naturally found in the environment, but most of the heavy metals in food come from soil or water that has been contaminated through either farming and manufacturing practices like pesticides and mining and smelting and pollution. Okay? So you have crops that absorb heavy metals from earth and water, the same way they do nutrients. So of course, when these farmers are producing their items, they're also putting pesticides in them. And don't think that organic food is totally organic, because if you have a farmer up the road that's using these crappy materials, it's going to blow over into your products as well. So you're probably saying, well, what are the solutions? Well, research shows that plants grown in different parts of the globe or even different parts of the same farm can contain significantly different heavy metal levels. Yes, I'm well familiar with that. And I just told you that. Remember, the wind blows different products in the environment. Okay? Contamination can also be very localized, but we have to remember that unless you have like a bubble around your farm, it's going to be very hard to prevent Farmer Joe from affecting Farmer David. Okay? So, what should we do? Let's talk about some practical things we could do. So again, we say, what are the solutions? Because, I'm all about providing solutions. So anytime I go behind the scenes, giving you all the science behind these headlines, we got to also give you the solutions. What are the solutions? You got to limit the amount of infant meal that you give your child. Because again, remember I told you that the infant meal that you see is coming from rice. They put rice in it, and it's a rice-based food. And because it's a rice-based food, it has those high levels of lead in it, okay, and arsenic. So parents have other choices according to the Consumer Reports scientists. They can get iron forfeited cereals made from other whole grains, such as oats, that are lower in inorganic arsenic. Another solution, choose the right rice. According to the Consumer Reports test, brown rice had more inorganic arsenic than white rice. White balsamic, I'm thinking balsamic vinaigrette, sorry. White basmati rice from California, India, and Pakistan, and sushi rice from the U.S. are good choices that had an average half as much inorganic arsenic as most other types. Rice cakes, cereal, and pasta were also high in inorganic arsenic. So you got to also rethink your rice prep time. So you want to cook it if you're cooking it in a large amount of water, they recommend 6 to 10 parts of water to 1 part of rice. And of course, you want to drain it. This will help to reduce the arsenic content. Okay? Another solution, limit the packaged snacks. Many contain rice flour, but even those without it don't supply much nutritional value. So even without the heavy metal risk, snacks aren't necessarily a part of your child's diet, and they can have added sugars and sodium. So just as you're trying to get rid of the heavy metals, now you got to worry about the sodium and the salt. Of course, I want you to eat more fruits and veggies, overdose on those. I'm a vegetarian, so of course I'm going to be proactive in making sure that you eat your fruits and veggies, but here's the deal. The fruits that have low heavy metals are things like apples, applesauce that is unsweetened, avocados, bananas, barley with diced vegetables, beans, cheese, grapes, hard-boiled eggs, peaches, strawberries, and yogurt. And of course, stay away from those juices. You already heard the panelists talk about that. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends not giving any fruit juice to babies in the first year of life. And look, they should be drinking breast milk anyway. You want to limit the juice to 4 ounces a day for kids ages 1 to 3 and 6 ounces for children 4 to 6. And we wonder why these kids are bouncing all off the wall. Look at the sugar content. And go easy on the chocolate, the chocolate, the cocoa. Okay, the cocoa powder may contain cadmium and or lead. The cocoa itself may have more than dark chocolate, and dark chocolate may have more than milk chocolate. Now they're messing with my chocolate. And of course, I say vegetarian / pescatarian. I actually eat fish once a month. Okay, and you got to pick the right fish, like tuna, king mackerel. These are just some of the examples that are high in methyl mercury. Of course, children and pregnant women should avoid these because of the high metal content. And of course, those of you that are taking in protein powder, you gotta be careful because these may contain arsenic, cadmium, and lead. And as a matter of fact, I remember showing my students a video about this also, where they went into a certain name brand store and they asked the people, what was in their products. And of course, they were like, oh, we all good. We're good over here. But whey and egg-based protein powders tend to have less than plant-based ones, okay, such as soy and hemp. But again, you should consider those in what? Moderation. And finally, we must talk about our water system. Check your water. If you get your water from a well or if your home has older pipes, consider having your water tested. Of course, remember, heavy metals seep into our soil. They're in the ground, and that's where your well water is located as well. So you want to make sure that you get your pipes updated if you can. I know it's probably expensive, but older pipes are probably made with lead. And finally, eat a broad array of healthy whole foods. You want to make sure that you rotate your foods to help you avoid from overconsumption of those heavy metals, okay? Remember, heavy metals do damage to the body. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, stay in the light. Don't let anybody lower your aura just because they aren't in the right frame of mind. Professor TK the Chemist always gives positive thoughts. I'm not about just giving you all the bad. I like to balance it. So please, 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 don't let anyone lower your aura just because they aren't in the right space. Go to the library and learn something new every single day. Malcolm X once said, education is your passport to your future. Get up, get out, and get some knowledge, my elders and my young people. The library is free. Everything that I'm sharing with you in my videos, you can fact check me. I want you to check your resources. Check my resources. Do your research. Don't settle for less. Your health is your wealth. Peace.